Hi class. Today we're going to talk about solitary confinement in prisons. We're going to continue our discussion of prisons, the keepers, and the kept. And we're going to also talk about and focus on the two objectives in this module about describing how supermax prisons function and how they differ from regular prisons, and also explain how they have confinement as solitary confinement in prisons and especially in supermax prisons. But before we do this, let's talk a little bit about the history of prisons in America. The first prison that was built for the sole purpose of having a prisoner stay in their cell and repent their sins was Eastern State Penitentiary, built in 1829 in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. In fact, the city of Philadelphia was built around the prison. It was built like a fortress, like a castle, and it was meant to put the fear of God in any person that was sentenced there. They were put in their cells 24/7. They had an adjacent courtyard to their cell, and they got their food through a little door in the wall. They never spoke to anybody, and they never were spoken to. In fact, the food that was brought to them in a cart had to have the wheels muffled, and they were covered so they couldn't hear the wheels of the cart. And the guards also had to have their shoes covered so that they couldn't hear the guards walking up and down. Because they were in total isolation 24/7, many of the inmates went insane. They just couldn't stand this isolation. So when the next prison in America was built in New York, in Auburn, New York, they decided to go ahead and still have silence in the prison, but allow the prisoners to come out and eat together and also to work together. And this seemed to help the mental ability of the prisoners. They seemed to be better off and not go insane. So when we went ahead and decided to make other prisons, we went ahead and followed the New York system. Fast forward to 21st century and the introduction of the supermax prison. And once again, the old issues of the 19th century solitary confinement have emerged. The supermax prison was introduced in 1983 in Marion, Illinois, when 2 correctional officers were murdered on the same day, and the prison was put on permanent lockdown 23 hours. That began the idea of the supermax prison. Solitary confinement, locked in their cells 23 hours a day with 1 hour of exercise a day. This type of prison was designed to be much more punitive than the other prisons, and inmates in a supermax prison can spend years separated from the natural world around them. Wardens of supermax prisons think that this is a good idea because it's a more safety for their other inmates and for the staff. 40 states have a supermax prison where inmates only leave their cell 1 hour a day. They eat all their meals in their cell. They do not communicate with other inmates. They do not talk to the guards, and they are not participating in educational or vocational programs. Just as what happened in the Philadelphia system, there has been a significant increase in mental and physical health issues associated with supermax and with the inmates that are in there. Some studies of the supermax prison have seen an increase among inmates in depression, anger, hostility, sleep disturbances, and anxiety brought about from extreme isolation. As of 2018, federal and state regulators have looked into prisons, such as supermax prisons, and have been allowing them to introduce the idea of getting them out of their cells more than just 1 hour a day. They're also trying to get them back into the general population sooner than later. Whether supermax prisons are successful in controlling violence and disturbances in the general inmate population is still being studied. Many researchers have come to the conclusion that such a prison is not appropriate for mentally ill inmates. I will be directing you to 2 websites in this module. One is Eastern State Penitentiary, where my husband and I were able to visit a couple of years ago and did a tour of the prison. It's a museum now, and it's extremely interesting. So look for that. And the other is a PowerPoint that we made of our visit. The second one is the supermax prison in Florence, Colorado, which is very well known for having a lot of the notorious people in prison there that we know about. and some of the issues that they have. So make sure you look at both of those websites.